Anchors away, guys. 4:41 in the morning, West Coast time. It's still the 10th, Saturday of February 2024. The Weaver Giants here, Roseman, California. Talking about my big brother in response to video I was seeing regarding uh, artist in recovery, aka Daryl P, and his reaction to the homeless vets and him freaking out. And I'm telling you about my brother's story. I hope he gets bored to death. Because you don't piss off veterans, and you don't piss off the homeless, and you don't piss off homeless vets, and you don't know what the hell you're talking about at the time, I think. You hadn't been hanging around veterans enough. You haven't been hanging around what they've been going through, and you hadn't talked to them either. I had. I had. My brother was getting yelled at by Aviation Bosun's Mate 1 Wired. My brother's point was getting there. He started hammering on my brother, not because of mental, because my brother was too damn stucky. There was history concerning about how my brother was trying to physically push him, besides doing swimming a lot. Also in his youth, my brother, David Shaw, God rest his soul, you guys have seen this so many times on my video of how my feet is regarding that. My brother had his own biological father divorced from my mother. I mean, my mother divorced his ass. Long stories on those, different videos previous in the Wind Files. My brother had gone to his grandfather's ranch growing up during the summertime and work as a kid. Lived in hay and horseback riding and tending bull, but building his body strength up as a kid. So basically, when he got into the military, he got into the recruit training center over at San Diego. They didn't see this wishy-washy guy. They saw a guy who had a strong-ass stomach, bit pudgy. Wasn't for fat. It was a lot of muscle he was building in this area here. Mine's fat. It's gravity and everything else. So he was building this up, and this guy wired his company commander, the second company commander, the first company commander was B.T. Jefferson. He was on his ass like crazy. He kept calling my brother a mama's boy. The one thing he never did was insult Ma. Cardinal rule around him. I want to show you the company commanders again. The guy on the far left on the edge of the paper, that's Jefferson. And the other one, actually, let's see. No. This is Wired. This is Jefferson. My big brother at the time when he got his picture. Somewhere in there. There you go. Far end top. Big brother. Right where my forefinger's at. Somebody said a joke, so he smiled and laughed. He punched Wired in the face. Part of my brother's training, and he was with the Big Brothers organizations back then in the 70s. Growing up as a kid, he needed a role model. A guy named George Bouvier. God bless him, God rest his soul. George had taken my brother to martial arts schools and helped train my brother in the martial arts. My brother was varied in his activities that I didn't realize until I was hearing the stories in their meeting halls because my brother wouldn't talk about it as much. But when he did, we were out and alone, and I thought some of the stories were bullshit anyway, but not until I started verifying. I'm like, he did what? But the one particular story, I wish I had an eyewitness for this one because I would love to have seen Wired's face at this junction. Unfortunately, Wired passed away years back due to cancer. My brother had gone to see him before he passed away to make amends. They both made amends. Wired was out of line. He regretted what the hell he did to Dave, and Dave really regretted what the hell he did to Wired. He put Wired from a training, an NCO, back to the fleet, basically, when Wired got out of the hospital. My brother had to spend 3 days in the hospital and then in the brig while the Navy decided what they were going to do with him. You don't insult Ma. Came out to my brother and started calling my brother a mama's boy and everything else, and it pissed him off. To where my brother said he didn't have to say it. He just took action. One uppercut. I don't know the moves, but all I know he was using his open hand and used his palm to shove it and broke Wired's jaw. In about a half a second, there were NCOs watching this damn thing, and another half a second later, they were on my brother's ass. Dogpiled his ass. Beating the crap out of him. My brother went in the brig. They were going to give him an option. Dishonorable discharge. The worst thing you could ever get when you're in the military. Because you're no longer a citizen. You're not a human being anymore. You don't exist. There was a SEAL commander on board base there. He saw what happened. He also saw the moves my brother used. But he also had an advocate, Jefferson. Jefferson saw potential in my brother. In that week lineup, the NCOs were looking at the recruits. And this is the stories I've been told again and again by my brother on this one, so I'm trying to remember it exactly at this point. Jefferson was lining up the recruits that they got, and he's pointing out what he's going to be, what he thinks they're going to be. And then he looks at my brother and he says, "You're a BT." My brother looked at him for a half second. Did the head shake? Like, what? Jefferson smiled at him for a second and moved on. Jefferson had a feeling who was going to be going through what school, what A school, right after training. You have to get training for some kind of job in the military. Boiler technician was basically at the time when we barely getting the nuclear reactors in ships. And the ships my brother would be serving on were old diesels, which means they had to have fuel, which means they'd have to have water and big ass steam pipes and stuff. Me, with plumbing and mechanics, forget it. My brother was trying to tell me all about this stuff. It's not until I started learning stuff on YouTube, what he was doing and what they were talking about. I looked at all this damn complicated stuff, and I'm thinking, this is the shit you went through, Dave? Fuck. Oh, man. Oh, Oh, my brother was telling me so many stories about the damn thing. I never did see any pictures about it until they actually came up with YouTube, and then I can actually see it right after my brother passes. What my brother went through, and what he had to accomplish in there. It was a hell of an accomplishment for him being a boiler technician. I'll tell you that much. Not just boiling water. I mean, it was more complicated than I thought. Holy crap! So anyway, it was decided that to do my brother's punishment, he would go through SEAL training for 3 stages of it. And if my brother cut it, he would have the option of going back into the Navy, into the fleet, or going into the SEALs to continue training. My brother took the option. He wasn't about to be dishonorably discharged, so he took the challenge. Not out of fear, he was going to do it. This is a shot to be a frogman. He discovered that the Navy were frogmen at the time. Specialized frogmen. They like to blow things up. My brother learned how to blow things up. He also learned how to eliminate threats, shall we say. Training, building up his physique more, making him sharper. And because he had martial arts training, it helped him out in this training. They have a training center out in Coronado. I think they still do today. I mean, over the past 30 or 40 years, they moved San Diego training from San Diego and moved it over to Great Lakes. They actually had 2 training centers. And Great Lakes is a hell of a lot colder and a lot harder and harsher than California. But they had training out there. My brother completes it. The regular graduation is something to see, these company of men with the flags and stuff. Very few people can actually see SEAL graduation because it is that specialized. And even back then, they were still ironing, getting improvements upon the training. But very few people had actually classified access to go on to Coronado to see the graduation. My uncle, Morris Cameron, I called him Uncle Bill. Everybody called him Billy, but his name was Morris. That's how his father set up his name. He was a Marine, boxing champion, but he also served in the Korean War. Survived Incheon, and never talked about it to anybody, except for those who actually served and been over there. My brother was one of those who actually learned about it. My brother and Uncle Bill had that close, tight relationship. Tighter than Uncle Bill's sons would have. He would not have his sons join the military at all. But one would join the police department, and the other one would be a musician, and turns out to be a therapist afterwards. But Uncle Bill never shared any of his military experience with them except through my brother. And there was things my brother took to the grave on that one. So my brother really had an affinity towards the military at the time. I wish I had, but I was physically not able to. Plumbing issues, open heart surgery, age of 4 years old. Heart really didn't get fully healed enough until about around age of 30, which meant I was FUBAR and I could not join the military. Even if I signed a waiver, my doctor would not sign off on the damn thing. He wasn't taking any chances, and neither would Mom. So I never joined the military. But I had a military brother, and there's a long story on this one here. A small ceremony, pinning of the Budweiser on the chest. Before my brother passed away, I saw his chest the last time. He still had the two marks. They tacked it on you. You don't have any clean shirts after that. I held on to that pen for a long while after my brother passed away. I still have it put into a special bag back here. No, actually, it's up in here. Wrapped up in tape with his jump wings. Seals also had to jump because it's sea, air, and land. I don't take them out as much because I was always afraid of what I'd find. And the thing of it is, I'd rather not. My brother rests. Green box. A few other personal mementos in there. But his pins I still kept. They call it the Seal Trident. The Navy, especially the SEALs, call it the Budweiser. And I'm not bringing that up for anybody. After I'm gone, maybe, but I'm not. I'll do a will and last testament on that one too. See who gets it. People I trust, basically in the family. The clock that you see in the back wall. When Dave and I lost Ma back in 2013, he had been on a site that dealt with SEAL memorabilia, merchandise. Merchandise doesn't tell you if the guy was in the military or not, except maybe if he was a military collector. That would be some of the thinking out there. But my brother served. My brother had served. I got his clothing bagged and secured. That I have a hard time trying to deal with it. Somewhere on my phone, I've got it. So my brother did serve in the military, and he did go to a school to learn how to be a boiler technician. There was a catch in the Navy that my brother told me about. In order to join the SEALs, you had to serve in the fleet for about a year. But my brother had been training in the military, in the Navy, so he had to do two jobs. One, to service the fleet when it comes down for being a boiler technician. I mean, these guys had to have water for and steam and power. They would call my brother an engineman, I think. I had been up on the military ratings and ranks. Ranks, one thing. Ratings, they've been changing these damn things for so many decades, I've lost track of that damn crap. But anyway, it's hard for me to talk about my brother because he's been gone for about over 5 years. He talked to people about his life, but he'd go into military stand downs and sometimes he felt like he was at home. But there have been things in the military that kind of prevented him from going full out. Meaning, when he got into the military and he did his training, some people in there actually gave my brother a worse experience than Wyatt had, let's just say. But he was still a 4-0. meaning he was still trying to do the best he can and try to surpass everybody he could. There had been a lot of conflicts back then, a lot of initiations that happened that they outlawed because they were extremely humiliating. My brother couldn't take it, but he took it anyway. He turned to drugs and alcohol. They did have recovery programs, barely getting out there in the Navy. My brother would keep the pain in. 79. My brother went in 77. In 79, he was, let's see, he did about 8 or 9 months on a old tin can, they called it. USS John McCain, God rest his soul. And he was a boiler technician, and he liked the guys. He liked the command crew. This was a ship that dealt with respect until he got to the coral shit. CV 46, the Ageless Warrior. This was a reconditioned supply ship that turned into an aircraft carrier that was needed in Korea, then Vietnam, and then my brother got into a damn thing. This was not a happy crew. I mean, they said the worst ship that they actually had back then was the USS Ranger. Next to that was the Coral shit. I'm sorry, the Coral Sea. Without naming names, because they were probably either alive or dead or probably go after me for it, but there was a CEO on there that actually did tolerate my brother to a point, and XO didn't like my brother as much. Uh, what was it? Charlie, or was it Bravo he was in? I think it was in Charlie. Charlie's section in the boiler. Lieutenant he could deal with. Some of the other guys in there he couldn't. There was some of those guys that got my brother ambushed, got him physically injured. Took out part of my brother's hearing a bit. My brother had to compensate on that one. And during that time, my brother got the word about Aunt May dying. He couldn't go to the funeral. He got the word after Aunt May died, because when you're in the SEALs, you go on missions. And a lot of shit to this day is still classified. But number 2 mode. My brother was boiler technician, and he was working on the cat drags, basically. The boilers that they would be running into the fire room Charlie would be giving steam for the cats up on the flight deck, my brother would be telling me. Build up enough steam so the airplanes can take off and land. My brother got used to it down there. Remember, he came home and he scared the hell out of us. We didn't expect him one particular Christmas before Aunt May passed away. And he was a changed man because he went through a first combat experience. And it rattled his cage to a point where Maud couldn't understand him. So, Ma told him to go down to Long Beach and talk to a shrink. He met a former team member, first team member, who turned into psychiatry. So he'd be working with the veterans coming back from their first ops. They talked for a long while. The essence was my brother was suggested to put everything else in a box inside and just move on. The only way they could deal with the PTSD. It's very unsettling on the first stop when you have to use your training. Very unsettling. He kept that pain around for a hell of a long while until it haunted his ass decades later. My brother would continue to serve the military, and he couldn't go to Aunt May's funeral, but he was going to damn well try to help Ma out when Grandma got sick, got disabled, when she had the stroke hitting her left and right. Talk about this in my Win Files. Navy, unfortunately, could not release my brother. I mean, they could have. They should have. But there are other circumstances happening in the military. He tried to go through the chain of command all the way up to CPAC. I'm sorry, SINPAC. Even SINPAC said no. He was going to help Ma out one way or another. Red Cross couldn't do it. Salvation Army couldn't help out. What's the one thing a military guy is not supposed to do? They called it AWOL at the time. Now it's unauthorized absence. Missing ship's movement is a major no-no. He packed his trash up and left. Put his stuff in a duffel bag, went to the laundry on base, cleaned up his crap, got the hell out, and missed ship's movement. Came home unexpectedly. We were living in Granada Hills at the time on McKeever. I opened the door and there he is. Hi, John. Dave, what the hell are you doing out? I'm on leave. What's happening? So after hugging a guy, I hadn't seen him in a while. Ma was surprised, and then she looked at him with a glare and said, "All right, Dave, what'd you do this time?" "Nothing. I took some time off in the Navy." "You sure?" "Yeah." How come I don't believe you? John told me what happened with Grandma. And then she told him, "I'm glad you're home anyway, son." Yeah, that's son bit, but she was very glad Dave was back because she needed the help. Little history about Ma. When she was taking care of the two elderly ladies we had back in Arleta about a couple of years earlier than that, Ma wrenched her back a bit. So she had to be laid up for a while. We had to have friends and family come over, help take care of the ladies, and not to mention me. So Ma already had a bad back taking care of Grandma. And me growing up as a teenager wasn't exactly helpful, but we're struggling like crazy. And with the help of our friends and family, been trying to take care of Grandma. But Ma wanted David. She had written letters to the Navy getting him out. David just flat out refused. Maybe because my brother was specialized too much, or something else happened in the Navy that they weren't going to release my brother. I don't know why. Never could find out. My brother wouldn't tell me as much. Some of it anyway. The rest of it I had to find out when he was out, and then he'd be talking after that. But at the time, we didn't know. I thought he was on leave. He would do odd jobs, but he'd stay at home and help Ma out. He would also go out drinking. He would also go out using. He went back in the Navy to do his time, to finish up his time. But the thing of it is, we had an uncle. Did I ever remember mentioning about Morris Cameron, special investigator for the state of California, who was also licensed as an officer of the court? The same guy who witnessed my brother go through the awarding of the Budweiser, Did I ever mention anything about that? Maybe somewhere in my win files. So here it is. My brother sees his uncle. They talked. Uncle Bill was there just to see how Ma was doing with Grandma and just to check up on Grandma. Ma was the ward, but Uncle Bill was still responsible. He was still the elder of the family, of the siblings anyway. Story went along that my uncle, if he ever came back and saw my brother, he'd be forced to arrest my brother. And besides, my brother was already hunted by, well, we call him NCIS, but they called him NIS, Naval Investigative Services, not to mention Shore Patrol. Shore Patrol is one of the jobs I actually had, was chasing after deserters. My brother had to deal with that designation for a long while. He was a deserter because he left his post. He left the ship without authorization, without leave, without anything. Except he packed up his trash and got the hell out. He got off board the ship. He went to help Ma out. There was a guy named Roger Gerbrock. He was a swimming buddy of his in the Navy. In the teams, he always had a swimming buddy. God rest his soul. I remembered him, and I remember the stories concerning about old Misery being a training thing. I just never remember what the hell the class number was when he graduated from the SEALs. But I remember old Misery being a telephone pole, heavier than shit, and the guys would have to lift this damn thing up as a punishment, as a team, and they had been assigned to boat crews. There was a lieutenant that my brother was assigned to, who became later on as a CNO for the SEALs before he retired. Admiral with a lot of stars and a lot of years and experiences. And also a published author. But he wouldn't remember my brother anyway. Not remembering the boat crew. I remember those little things. My brother had to go back to San Diego and turn himself in. Part of his processing before he went to trial, he had to work up in a school up in Bremerton. I think up in Oakland, I think. A correspondence school. Dealing with paperwork, and paperwork. It was just stuff to keep my brother busy and out of the brig mostly. Because of certain electrical wiring problems that happened in that school. Place burned down. Navy practically blamed my brother and the other guy, but got cleared after they found out that it was all old wiring that caught the whole school on fire. Didn't settle well with my brother. My brother kept getting indications that he wanted to get the hell out because Ma was at home with Grandma and me, and he knew I was going to be able to take care of Grandma very well. And he didn't trust anybody else. He wanted to be home taking care of Grandma because that's what family does. Family sticks with each other. My brother fought his attorney to get a quick discharge. He was going to go home one way or another. He got out on a bad conduct discharge, which is one step above dishonorable discharge. They call it the big chicken dinner during those days. You're still a citizen. You can still vote. You don't get the benefits as much, except being except funeral. And that's about it. Medically, you're on your own. You can drive, you can work. Your security clearance is going to suck. But at least you're a citizen, you can vote. And you get out. My brother did. But before he did that, after he got sentenced, he wasn't going to be put on in prison. No, he got put on a ship. Minesweeper. He couldn't tell me what the damn minesweeper's name was because he forgot what the damn thing was. The minesweeper had about 6-month tour, 6 to 8 month tour, I think, maybe shorter than that. Sailing around in the ocean, going to different ports. My brother could not leave the ship. He got on the minesweeper because he was on a work party, my brother was telling me. And the work party was nobody on the ship knew how to put back a boiler. Minesweeper was smaller in those days. But it's still a big ship anyway if you're a civilian looking at the damn thing. But when you're in the Navy, it's still a small ship. And one boiler to run it all. And nobody could put the damn thing back together again until they found my brother. And my brother was going to be doing a short term on it, just whatever kind of task that they wanted. They dragged the guys out of the brig. Here's your work party. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And you're going to do this. My brother got the minesweeper. And the one thing that they needed on the minesweeper was a boiler technician who knew what the hell he was doing. He became engineman and boiler technician. From what the story my brother was telling me, he rebuilt the boiler to where it was actually running and working. But there was a caveat. My brother stayed on board ship while he kept visiting ports. So, Hawaii, Philippines, Japan, back home. Actually, no, Philippines, Australia, then up to Japan and home. I mean, it was just a Pacific cruise. 8 months tour, I think. He came back home. His service, he had already served his time. So he came back home. Just in time to help take care of Grandma for last year or less of her life before she passed away. From then, he started getting into drugs and alcohol. He'd go out and party. But the thing is, with the connections he made out there, he learned where and when to get bags of weed, dime bags. In order to do that, he had to have money. Some of the jobs he had, he was losing because of his addiction. It was changing him. And I'm going through high school during this time. 2 years later, in 1985, he's a different person I remembered. He was happy that I graduated out of high school. It took me 4 years to do it. I screwed up 1 year. My fault. I had to remake it. Long stories, I got them in the wind files on that one. But my brother turned into something else I didn't recognize. He scared the hell out of me, more and more angrier, more and more frustrated. There was a lot of things happening inside of him that they didn't realize and kept bottled up, and he didn't want to deal with it. The alcohol and drugs were not using. He mostly smoked weed. He smoked weed and drank, but not at home. Ma would like an occasional liquor every so often, but Dave drank off away from home and come home meaner than shit. Surprised he didn't get arrested by Ma. But I was getting sick and tired. I was afraid of him, so we threw his ass out. on me. Pissed off, angry. Wasn't coming back home again. That kind of ranting and raving. So he goes. Yellow and black Maverick. Ma and I had to deal with him for the past few days. Then after that, we started looking for the bastard. He disappeared off the globe. Couldn't find his ass anywhere in San Fernando Valley. Even with some of the friends we actually had looking for him, couldn't find him. He literally disappeared. 3 or 4 months later, I think it was about 2 or 3 months, somewhere in that time period. I was back in 1985. He came back home as a skeleton. The stories that he had said in the meeting halls regarding how he got to that point. I also talked to my wind files on this one. He tried to kill himself. Didn't work. 3 days in a nut hut. And he came back home wanting a change. And I didn't want him there. But I wanted him there. We were torn and conflicted. We talked to people in the program. Actually, Ma talked to people in the program. Gave them numbers. Says, you call or else you're not staying here. The next morning, my brother's making the calls. And he goes. He goes for the stranger. I don't even know who the hell he is. But he helped my brother on the path of recovery. It took my brother a long time to gain my mother's trust, and mine too. It changed into a different person altogether. What I used to know my brother as, a smart ass. But he was still an asshole. He still had that edge. And he was still an angry person. It's not until I was listening to the meetings, like a few years before, or maybe about a year or two before Ma passed away, that I actually was learning more and more what the hell happened. He had talked to people in therapy about it. He had been under medications to deal with the anger issues and also dealing with the PTSD he had gotten from the military and for the shit happened afterwards. He was getting nightmares left and right on that one. And Big Brother, clean sober 32 years, and I missed the living crap out of him. And some of the stuff he talked about in the meetings stayed in the meetings. Except between us. Part 3, I think, coming up.